The last bookstore in the world. The rain in Neo-Alexandria wasn't like the rain I remembered from the old picture books. It didn't fall in gentle drops. It came in sheets, hard and relentless, as if the sky itself was trying to scrub the grime from the towering chrome skyscrapers. I was huddled under the flickering holographic sign of the last bookstore, a place that was as much an anachronism as I was. My name is Kalen, and I fix things. Not the fancy new tech that everyone else is plugged into, but the old stuff. Wind-up clocks, vintage gramophones, anything with gears and springs. That's what brought me to the bookstore. Old Ilara, the owner, had a pre-digital cash register that was on the fritz. I pushed open the heavy wooden door, a real, solid piece of oak, and the scent of aging paper and leather filled my lungs. It was a smell that felt more real than anything else in this city of synthetic everything. Ilara was perched on a stool behind the counter, her face illuminated by the green glow of a single desk lamp. "Kalen," she rasped, her voice like sandpaper. "It's about time. This blasted thing's been spitting out gibberish all day." I smiled. "That's what you said last time, Ilara, and the time before that." "Well, it's true," she grumbled, but there was a twinkle in her eye. I was just about to get to work when the bell above the door chimed again. A woman stood there, dripping rainwater onto the worn floorboards. She was a stark contrast to the world outside, a splash of vibrant color in a city of monochrome. Her hair was the color of autumn leaves, a fiery red that seemed to defy the perpetual twilight of the city. She wore a long coat that was a shade of green I hadn't seen since I'd last visited the biodomes. She pulled back the hood of her coat, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. Her eyes were the color of the sea on a stormy day, a deep, churning gray-green. They swept over the towering shelves of books, a look of wonder on her face that I hadn't seen on anyone in years. I can't believe it," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the store's air purifiers. "It's real." Ilara, never for one for sentimentality, cleared her throat. "Can I help you, miss?" The woman's gaze fell on me then, and for a moment I forgot how to use my hands. I was just standing there, a screwdriver in one hand, a half-disassembled cash register in front of me, and I felt as clumsy as a newborn giraffe. She smiled, a small, tentative thing that did strange things to my insides. "I'm looking for a book." "Well, you've come to the right place," I managed to say, my voice sounding a little too loud in the quiet of the store. "I'm looking for something real," she said, and her eyes met mine again. "Something that isn't made of light and code." And in that moment, standing in the last bookstore in a city that had forgotten what it was like to turn a page, I felt like I had found something real too. Something more real than the gears and springs I spent my days with. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that this was just the beginning of a story I wanted to be a part of.
Secret, a soft melody against the percussive rhythm of the rain outside. She was looking for a specific book, a collection of old star charts titled The Celestial Atlas of the Uncharted. "My grandfather used to tell me stories from it," she explained, her fingers ghosting over the spines of leather-bound volumes as we walked through the narrow, winding aisles of the bookstore. The air was thick with the scent of old paper, and dust motes danced in the beams of light that pierced the gloom. He said it contained maps to stars that had been forgotten, stars that you couldn't see from the city. I followed her, forgetting completely about Ilara's broken cash register. My world, usually so neatly defined by cogs and levers, had suddenly expanded to include forgotten stars and the quiet intensity of the woman walking beside me. Most people are happy with the pre-plotted routes in the city nav. They don't care much for looking up anymore. That's because they've forgotten there's anything up there to see. Lyra replied, turning to look at me. Her stormy eyes held a flicker of defiance. They've traded the wonder of the unknown for the comfort of the predictable. Her words resonated with a part of me that I thought I had locked away. I spent my days reviving the past, breathing life into objects others deemed obsolete. In a way, we were both searching for something that the rest of the world had decided to forget. Our search was fruitless. We climbed rickety ladders to the highest shelves, our hands covered in the fine dust of decades. We delved into forgotten corners of the store, uncovering everything from pre-digital poetry anthologies to manuals for machines that no longer existed. But there was no sign of the celestial atlas. Finally, defeated, we sat at a small, wobbly table in the back, a single bare bulb hanging overhead. Ilara had silently placed 2 steaming mugs of synth tea in front of us before retreating to her counter. "I'm sorry," I said, watching the steam curl from my mug. Lyra didn't seem disappointed. She was looking at me, a thoughtful expression on her face. "You know this place well. You move through it like it's a part of you. It's the only place that makes sense anymore. Everything out there," I gestured vaguely towards the rain-streaked windows, "it's all so temporary, so disposable. Here, things last. Stories last." She reached across the table and lightly touched the back of my hand. Her fingers were cool, but a jolt of warmth shot up my arm. It was a simple, fleeting gesture, but it felt more significant than anything I had experienced in a long, long time. "Then maybe we just haven't found the right part of the story yet," she said softly. Her smile was no longer tentative. It was a small, steady flame in the dusty dimness of the bookstore. The rain continued to hammer against the glass, a relentless drumming that seemed to seal us off from the rest of the world. The broken cash register sat on the counter, forgotten. All I could think about was a map to a forgotten star and the impossible, wonderful feeling that maybe, just maybe, I had found a new one right here in the last bookstore in the world. The spell was broken by a gruff cough from the counter. "The rain stopped," Ilara said, without looking up from a dusty ledger, "and this register won't fix itself." It was a clear dismissal, and her tone suggested she had witnessed more than enough quiet moments over her long years. Lyra pulled her hand back, though the warmth of her touch lingered on my skin. "I should go," she said, though she didn't sound entirely convinced. "Let me walk you to the transport station," I offered, surprising myself with my own forwardness. "The streets can be disorienting after dark." She agreed with that small, steady smile that was already becoming familiar. I packed up my tools, promising Ilara I'd be back first thing in the morning to finish the job. She just grunted in response. Outside, the air was clean and cold, scrubbed by the rain. The neon signs of Neo-Alexandria bled across the wet pavement, creating a distorted, shimmering reflection of the city above. For the first time in a long time, I didn't find it oppressive. Walking beside Lyra, the city felt different, like a backdrop to something more important. We walked in a comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the soft hum of passing vehicles and the distant, rhythmic thrum of the city's core. As we approached the gleaming, sterile entrance to the transport hub, a wave of reluctance washed over me. I didn't want this to be the end of the night. I wasn't ready to go back to my quiet apartment and the company of ticking clocks. "Wait," I said, stopping under the harsh white light of the station entrance. "Before you go, there's something I'd like to show you, if you want." She looked at me, her stormy eyes searching mine, and then she nodded. I led her away from the main thoroughfare, down a series of narrow alleyways I knew like the back of my hand. We stopped in front of a heavy, unmarked steel door. I pressed my thumb to a small, worn panel, and with a hiss of pneumatics and a clank of old-fashioned deadbolts, it slid open. My workshop was my sanctuary. Where the bookstore was a haven of stories, this was a haven of creation. The air smelled of machine oil, ozone, and hot metal. Shelves overflowed with gears of every size, spools of copper wire, and jars of tiny, intricate screws. Half-finished projects littered every surface: a brass bird with exposed clockwork wings, a navigator's astrolabe I was restoring for a collector, and dozens of clocks, all ticking in a gentle, unsynchronized symphony. Lyra stepped inside, her eyes wide with the same wonder she had in the bookstore. She ran her fingers lightly over the brass bird. "You made this?" "I still have work to do on it. I like things that have a heart, a clockwork heart, anyway. My grandfather was like you. He built things. He always said that to truly know something, you had to understand how it was made." She paused. "That's why the atlas is so important. It's not just a book of maps someone printed. He made it. He drew every chart by hand, wrote every note. It was his life's work chronicling his trips outside." The word hung in the air between us. "Outside the city dome?" I asked, my voice low. It was illegal, dangerous. Few people ever dared. She nodded. She believed we were forgetting how to look up for ourselves. He wanted to leave behind something real, a testament to the fact that there was more to the universe than the city's simulated sky. Suddenly, my mind, which was so used to seeing how parts fit together, began to turn. A craftsman, a man who builds things, a secret book. "Lyra," I said, my voice filled with a new energy. "A man like that, a man who builds things with his hands, he wouldn't just hide his life's work between the pages of another book. He'd build a place for it, a secret place." I looked at her, my own heart starting to take a little faster. "Did he ever build anything for you? Something small, something personal?" Her eyes widened in realization, a flicker of hope igniting in their depths. "He did," she breathed. "He made me a music box, a small wooden one with intricate carvings. He gave it to me just before he left for the last time." We looked at each other, the same thought passing between us in the quiet ticking heart of my workshop. The search wasn't over. We hadn't been looking for a book on a shelf. We had been looking for a key, and we had just found the lock. The journey to Lyra's apartment was a silent one, but it was a silence filled with a thrumming, unspoken energy. We took a sky tram, a transparent capsule that glided silently between the towering buildings. Below us, the city was a river of light, a relentless flow of data and energy. But for the first time, I felt completely disconnected from it, as if Lyra and I were in our own little bubble, moving towards a secret the rest of the world had long forgotten. Her apartment was a small alcove carved out of a massive residential spire. Like all the living spaces in Neo-Alexandria, it was efficient, sterile, and compact. But she had made it her own. A real, soil-filled pot held a flowering vine that climbed one of the pale gray walls. A hand-woven blanket, its colors rich and warm, was draped over the single sleep couch. It was an island of analog warmth in a digital sea. She went to a simple storage unit and retrieved a small wooden box. She handled it with a reverence that told me it was her most prized possession. She placed it on the small table between us, and I felt as though I was looking at the heart of the mystery. It was beautiful. carved from a dark, rich wood I couldn't identify. Its surface was smooth with age and handling. The top wasn't decorated with flowers or abstract patterns, but with a meticulously carved star field. I recognized the constellations immediately. Cygnus, the swan flying towards the center, Lyra with its bright star Vega, and Aquila, the eagle. She said, "He taught me the constellations on this box. He said they were the old navigators, the first map makers." I ran my fingers over the carvings, my mechanics' senses on high alert. I felt for seams, for pressure points, or for anything that felt out of place. The craftsmanship was perfect, seamless. There were no visible hinges or locks. "May I?" I asked, looking up at her. She nodded, her eyes fixed on my hands. I gently turned the box over. The bottom was plain except for a small, almost invisible inscription, Ad astra per aspera, through hardship to the stars. I brought it close to my ear, turning it slowly. I heard nothing, no rattle, no loose parts. But my fingers found something. On the constellation of Cygnus, the star known as Deneb was not flush with the surface. It was a pinprick, a tiny raised point of wood. I pressed it. Nothing. I tried to turn it. It wouldn't budge. My mind raced, sifting through the logic of mechanisms. A single button was too simple for a man like her grandfather. It had to be a sequence, a combination. "The old navigators," I murmured, looking back at the carved lid. They didn't just look at one star, they used them to plot a course. My eyes traced the path from Aquila to Lyra and finally to Cygnus. I looked at Lyra. Did he have a favorite story, a favorite path among the stars? Her brow furrowed in concentration. "He always talked about the summer triangle," she said. "Altair, Vega, and Deneb. He called them the 3 points of a perfect journey." My heart began to hammer against my ribs. Altair in Aquila, Vega in Lyra, Deneb in Cygnus. I found the tiny raised carving for Altair and pressed it, then the carving for Vega, and finally, with a soft intake of breath, I pressed the point of wood representing Deneb. There was a soft, satisfying click, a sound sweeter than any music. A thin, almost invisible seam appeared along the side of the box. I slid a fingernail into the crack, and a small, shallow drawer slid open. It didn't contain a book. It held no maps. There was only a single, small cylinder of brass, no bigger than my thumb. It was sealed at both ends. I carefully worked the cap free. Inside was a tightly rolled piece of old, brittle paper. Gently, I unrolled it. It wasn't a map of a star, but a map to a star map. Written in faded ink in the same elegant script as the inscription on the box was a short string of numbers and letters. 808.83 LAM. It wasn't a celestial coordinate, it wasn't a code. I stared at it, the gears in my own head turning, searching for a pattern, for a system I recognized. And then it hit me, with the force of a physical blow. I had seen a system like this before. Disorganized, ancient, barely used, but I had seen it. On the spines of the forgotten books in the darkest, dustiest corner of Alara's back room. It was an old library classification number. Her grandfather hadn't hidden the book in a secret vault or buried it in the ruins outside the city. He had hidden his book in the most obvious and therefore the most secret place in the entire world. He had hidden his book inside another book. I looked up at Lyra, a grin spreading across my face. "I know where it is. Our story isn't over. It's just leading us back to the beginning."
The sky tram back to the old district felt different. Dawn was a rumor on the horizon, a pale, milky wash of gray that began to dilute the inky blackness above. The lights of Neo-Alexandria, which had once seemed so absolute, now looked fragile, like a temporary web of light that could be blown away by the coming day.
We didn't speak. We didn't need to. We were two parts of a machine that had finally clicked into place, moving with a shared, singular purpose. Ilara was already there when we arrived, a thin curl of steam rising from a mug held in her wrinkled hands. She raised a skeptical eyebrow as we burst through the door, our faces flushed with excitement and lack of sleep. "The register's still broken," she said, her voice a dry rasp. "Ilara, we need to find a book. Section 808.83. Author's name starts with LAM. A flicker of something, maybe even amusement, crossed her features. She gestured with her head towards the darkest, most neglected corner of the store. "The old poetry anthologies. No one's looked at them in 50 years. Good luck." That's where we went, into the deep stacks, where the air was cool and smelled of time itself. The Dewey Decimal numbers were faded, painted on the ends of the shelves in a script from another era. My fingers, so used to the precision of small gears, traced the dusty spines, searching. Lyra was right beside me, a small light rod in her hand, casting a focused beam, making the dust motes dance. And then I saw it. 808.83 LAM. It was a thick, unassuming book with a drab brown cover. The title read, "Lamentations for a Lost World, a Collection." It was the perfect hiding place, a title so dreary and academic no one would ever choose to open it. My heart hammered in my chest. I pulled it from the shelf. It was heavier than it should have been. I laid it on a nearby sorting table, the dust puffing up in a small cloud. There was no visible seam, but when I ran my hand over the block of pages, I felt it. A subtle rigidity, a section that didn't yield like paper ought to. I used a thin knife from my pocket kit and carefully sliced along the edge of the pages. The front third of the book's pages fell away like a lid, revealing a perfectly carved-out cavity within. And there, nestled in the hollowed-out heart of a book of sorrow, was another book. It wasn't large, but it was magnificent. The cover was bound in a dark blue leather that felt soft as velvet, and embossed on the front in silver leaf was a single unfamiliar constellation. Lyra reached out a trembling hand and touched it. Together we opened it. The pages were not paper, but a thin, durable polymer filled with the most beautiful, intricate handwriting I had ever seen. They were star charts, yes, but they were so much more. In the margins were sketches of landscapes seen under alien suns, jagged mountains bathed in purple light, oceans the color of liquid metal. There were notes on the scent of the air, the feel of wind on unprotected skin, the sound of silence beyond the city's constant hum. It was a love letter to the universe written by a man who had dared to see it for himself. On the final page there was no map. There was only a single sentence, written in the same elegant script. "My dearest Lyra, I leave you not a map to a place, but a reason to go. The stars are not destinations, they are beginnings. Find your own constellation." Lyra traced the words with her finger, and a single tear tracked a clean path through the dust on her cheek. She looked up at me, her storming eyes clear and shining. "He wasn't leaving me a relic. He was leaving me a key," she whispered. In the quiet of the bookstore, with the first true rays of dawn beginning to filter through the grimy windows, I understood. The quest for the book had been the journey, the hardship that led to the stars, and now it was over. But standing there looking at the woman whose grandfather had charted forgotten stars, I knew my own journey had just begun. "So," I said, my voice softer than I intended, "where do we start?" Lyra closed the book gently. She didn't look at the map of the stars. She looked at me. A smile, brilliant as a supernova, spread across her face. "I think we just did," she said, reaching out and taking my hand, her fingers lacing with mine. And in the last bookstore in the world, surrounded by the ghosts of a billion forgotten stories, ours was just getting started. We had the map. We had the reason. We were the first two stars in a brand new constellation, and the whole universe was waiting for us to write its name.